Okay, so we've dealt with Friday. We have the messages coming in over the weekend. There was a problem both in Bangladesh and the Philippines where uh, the communications were not being handled quite as promptly as they should. In one case, the SWIFT terminal was shut down. Uh, Another in Bangladesh Bank, they had a backup system where they had a printer that was supposed to be printing off, the receipts of it so that someone could actually look at a paper record. And the North Korean cyber criminals had disconnected that printer by printing the PDF rather than to the printer. But the bottom line is, once they got through the weekend, and remember, there's weekends in three different places. So there's a weekend in New York, weekend in Bangladesh, and the weekend in the Philippines. But once they get through that, there's still a fair amount of money still in Rizal Bank. And so, the criminals are trying to still get that remaining money out. And that occurs over Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And this, really, does that, outlines it. And one of the interesting things here is they're moving huge amounts of cash. And we're talking physical currency that's being shipped uh, to the MSB and then ultimately to the casinos during the week following the embezzlement. And this cash would have had to go through several um, decision points within Rizal Bank. One is you would have had to approve the FX transactions, which the treasurer himself was doing. And then you would have had to approve the shipment of the cash. And they had large amounts of this cash leaving every single day going there. And, because of the conversion rate or whatever, we're talking huge physical amount of cash. This seems a little bit of an exaggeration, but I saw one account that said it would be the functional equivalent of trying to move a grand piano uh, as far as how heavy it is. Um, that is not an ordinary uh, banking transaction where you would have this much amount of money moving as far as cash. And then you also have to ask, does it make sense for a casino that would traditionally have other banking products, to be transforming all of this into cash as opposed to just simply another banking product. Uh, the cash was a way of breaking the audit trail and also putting the money out of reach of any subsequent efforts by law enforcement, to seize the money. The MSB PhilRem is very, very involved in all of this by number one, they're processing this through their accounts. They're processing all of the cash. Uh, they're layering it with other MSBs, and then they're interacting with the casinos. Meanwhile, you have the Swift recall messages that have come in, and you have the Rizal Bank that's moving the money in the face of these Swift recall messages that they say is ambiguous, uh, giving their acknowledgement that they've frozen the money. As we said earlier, they're taking a very, very technical view of what money is remaining in Rizal. They're looking at specific accounts. They're not looking at whether Rizal has de facto control over the money. So they freeze the sham accounts, which are totally fictitious people, but they don't freeze the PhilRem accounts. And if they had froze the PhilRem accounts, that would have greatly reduced the loss.
Right. So I think that it's quite okay to, um, question few things about results, AML environment holistically, because couple of things. I mean, these sham accounts, the due diligence, the um, everything seems to be like, it's not just that, it's happening during the weekend, but it's definitely, these accounts were opened. Um, I'm sure that, some time ago, like, not on the day or right before the event. So it definitely reflects, or one definitely has these questions about you know, the whole um, AML program.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And if you look at the bottom portion under Tuesday, February 9th, you see that it had gone beyond the banking center and it had gone beyond the operations group. And you have, legal and business leaders who are meeting Tuesday afternoon. You have the audit group involved at the request of legal. Uh, at this point, you know, you're not you're not talking a routine operational thing where you just have to make a decision and move on. You're having dedicated meetings with your senior legal and business and risk people looking at it. They've got the ability, if they just freeze everything, to go and forensically reconstruct all of the facts uh, in order to make sure that whatever they do, it's the correct thing. And for whatever reason, that's never really been fully um, uh, elaborated in the public media to date is what were the lawyers and the risk people uh, in Rizal Bank thinking when they were going and looking at these accounts and letting the money go forward. What they said in the hearings was we didn't have the right to stop the money, and so we let it go through. There's litigation now in New York where that's going to come under a lot of scrutiny, and eventually we'll see kind of how that resolves, whether it's through a settlement or a trial with people testifying. But from my perspective, one of the major issues here is once you've gotten to the point where you've gotten to the treasurer, you've gotten to the president, you've gotten to your head lawyers, you've gotten to the risk people, and you're faced with a choice, that's probably not ideal on either side. Do you freeze the money for a day or two and do the complete forensic review? Talk to the banks, talk to the Federal Reserve, talk to Bangladesh Bank. Uh, do you freeze it or do you let the money go through? And as I said, we'll talk about this later. What's the downside if you freeze it uh, and it is a legitimate transaction? I mean, there's a clear downside if it's an ongoing fraud and you freeze it and the fraudsters don't succeed. But if it's legitimate gambling, has
Mm,
anyone really suffered a consequence? And so I think one of the lessons learned beyond this case, but when you have an ongoing fraud, you need to have pretty good strategy for just making everything stand still so that you can sort out the facts. And while it's not ideal from either side, uh, you have to say, where are the worst consequences? If I freeze something and then later have to let it, go through a few days later, or if I don't freeze it and then I can never get the money back. And it's not unusual in these ongoing fraud situations for the bank, like Rizal Bank, to ask the uh, uh, Bangladesh Bank to give you what you call a hold harmless agreement, which is okay, I'll freeze it at your request, but if there's any litigation, you're going to have to pay for that litigation. You're going to have to pay for the damages. So I'll do what you're requesting, but you need to be financially responsible for the cost of that. And those kind of hold harmless agreements have been in the industry for many, many decades, uh, for when the bank itself is a victim and, they're trying to recover the money. Um, so it's not a novel concept. You just have to have your protocols set up so that you know that if we have this situation come in, you'll do steps A, B, and C, and maybe ask for a hold harmless agreement and sort it out.
Right. No, I think those are very, very good points, especially for, I mean, academic purpose. And, these kind of discussion only unfolds, what all happened and what could have happened, what should have happened. And I think that more these type of cases are discussed at different level. With the discussion, people can learn and understand how they can protect themselves from, this kind of event in the future.
I agree 100%.